Ron Klain, Donald Trump versus the World Health Organization. Which side do you want to defend?
Well, look, I'll start here. I've been a longtime critic of the World Health Organization. They did a miserable job on Ebola when we were working with them. There have been some reforms, some new leadership since then. I think they've done a better job here, but they definitely have made mistakes. But Donald Trump attacking the World Health Organization is like an F student attacking a B- student, okay? It's not that the World Health Organization has not made mistakes. They have. It's that Trump has made worse mistakes. And ironically, one of those horrible mistakes was saying on February 24th that the World Health Organization was very smart and doing a very great job. So what's happening here, Lawrence, is not that Donald Trump has any legitimate criticisms in his eyes of the World Health Organization. He's just trying to deflect the blame for his failures on testing, his failures to act promptly, his failures to get the protective gear in place. He wants to put the blame someplace else. He's the president who stood in the Rose Garden and said, I take no responsibility for this. And having failed in that defense, he's now just trying to push the blame someplace else.
And Judd Hagmann, the United Nations has said they do want to take a look at how the World Health Organization has handled this after the fact, once the dust is cleared, once they have the time to do that. Donald Trump doesn't want anyone taking a look after the fact or now at how he has handled this.
Right. And, Lawrence, I think that, as Ron, the things Ron was saying all make a lot of sense, I think, on the face of them. I think that when the history of this is all written, what we've seen now, it's now April. If you look back at the first 3 months, Donald Trump's reaction to this can be kind of neatly characterized as being as kind of shifting from one mode to another. The early mode, the January, February to the middle of March mode, was the downplaying mode. And many people, including my colleagues at the Recount, have done vivid examples shown by calendrically the number of days that Trump downplayed the virus throughout January, throughout February, all the way into the middle of March. And then as soon as he got to that point where he declared, okay, it's a war. This is now a war. It's now a pandemic. I'm shifting my strategy here. He moved from the mode of downplaying to the mode of blame shifting. And blame shifting has gone from, it's not just the WHO, of course, it's the Chinese who've been blamed. It's been other foreign actors who've been blamed. Many governors have been blamed. You mentioned Jay Inslee, the governor of Washington, but he's blamed at various times. Andrew Cuomo, he's blamed. Any governor of any state in which there's been a substantial number of coronavirus cases, and occasionally on the converse of that, thrown praise at states that have been lucky enough so far to have relatively low infection rates. So this is a traditional, this is Donald Trump. This is what he's going to do. He's going to take credit for whatever he can take credit for. He's going to cast blame on where he can cast blame on. And the WHO is just one in a panoply, and a growing panoply of targets that he's going to seek to try to cast a responsibility for anything that angers voters, and particularly voters who he thinks he needs in the 2020 election.